coming to this advanced talk on detoxification. Everybody can hear me in the back?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, like I said, I'm glad that we all survived the season of indulgence, probably some better than others. That's maybe why you're here tonight, is to get back on track. Tonight we're going to be talking about some very important applications that you guys can take home very, very quickly. We've handed out some packets of information. Everybody get that? And did everybody fill out the detoxification questionnaire? That'll give you a baseline for potentially how clean or how toxic your body may be. We were just alluding to the fact that several months ago we did a really powerful talk in the office on on the brain. It was based off of Dr. Karatsian's work. Man is really powerful in terms of his functional medicine approach to restoring brain function. He's worked with many, many patients with very, very debilitating brain and neurologic diseases. And so this talk tonight, and actually the next two ensuing talks that we're going to be doing, which are going to be much more clear the tables out. We'll be doing things like exercise. We're going to be doing foam rolling class. These are just kind of different layered approaches, if you will, to addressing toxicity. And so your brain controls everything about your body. So the things that you do to your body have an impact on your brain. And so if we start, the year off correctly, doing detoxification, helping to cleanse on a cellular level. All right, we're not talking about a colon cleanse. There's a huge distinction between the two. All right, if you wanted a colon cleanse, just take a handful of X-Lax. We're actually talking about detoxification on a cellular level. So if you can cleanse the cells, promote the cell wall to heal, if you can help to promote oxygenation, if you can get rid of toxicity much more efficiently, your body is going to be moving towards a much higher level of health and healing. So we have the exercise ball class scheduled for sometime in February. We'll give you the dates on that as we approach. And then in March we're going to be doing foam rolling. Does anybody foam roll out of curiosity? Does anybody not know what it is? Okay, so foam rolls basically are just that. They're cylindrical foam rolls, and what you would do with them, you'll find them a lot in like gyms, but you can do this at home as well, is that you would actually roll your body parts on it, and it's really good in terms of like if you would go to a massage therapist and get like trigger point work or massage work. This foam rolling, not as good as having a massage, but very powerful in terms of clearing out things like spasm and trigger points and even scar tissue, promoting better blood flow, moving through those tissues, and helping with restricted joint range of motion, feeling better, obviously, is an outcome of that. So foam rolling, we'll be teaching that class, and hopefully you'll join that. I know some of you in this room that were in that class last time that we did it. So if we look back, if you will, over the past 20, probably even longer than that, we're starting to see just this increase in different disease and conditions than we've never seen before. Things like allergies and asthma, autoimmune disorders like thyroiditis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, or rheumatoid arthritis. These conditions are starting to become much more prevalent. I know that Dr. Lonnie and I, we're actually starting into our 25th year this year. We've seen over the many, many years an increase in a lot of these different degenerative conditions. I mean, how many people in this room have been either personally touched by cancer or know somebody who's been dealing with cancer? I mean, I can raise my hand, obviously, and more than half the room has done that as well. So there has to be certainly reasons behind seeing this preponderance of disease going on within our within the United States and really within the world. So, trying to solve these situations, because our office obviously is very different, I would say, than most chiropractic offices. The Lord has been extremely good to us, and we've been able to very much expand our territory beyond just obviously adjusting spines, and gotten into a lot of nutritional approaches, functional medicine, helping people deal with all sorts of conditions. And so trying to solve somebody's health issues when they walk in the door is very much like putting a puzzle together. You have to be a good detective. You have to understand the different aspects of what promotes health, but also what causes disease. So we strive to take a multi-pronged approach, especially with some of the conditions that walk into our office. And so you would think that the powers that be would also be out there to help you and protect you, but unfortunately there's a lot that goes on out in the world today within consumer protection, the EPA, the FDA, these groups which hopefully if you didn't have rose-colored glasses on you would realize that they're not really out there to protect us. If anything, we have a lot of issues as it relates to different products that we actually consciously bring into our house, and some of these are like the top 10 most toxic substances that walk into our house, either consciously or unconsciously, and they are literally listed within this of the level of toxicity. So we're constantly being bombarded by so many different poisons, so many different toxins. Most of this stuff, we don't even know what it does to our body. There's 80,000 chemicals that are in industry, and about 30,000 of them wind up in our food sources. So when it comes to being able to test every single one of those and understand the human impact, it's literally impossible. There's other countries, most notably Europe, that is they're much more on top of this information. They're much more concerned about health and human safety, and don't allow nearly the amount of toxins that are out there to move into your house as much as what happens in our country. So you guys have to be much more diligent in terms of what you bring in. There's certainly there's many different websites that are on the internet today that promote much more conscious-minded types of cleaning products, floor polishes, detergents, and we actually do a talk in the office on those things, so that you guys have these websites. You are aware of what goes into your house and maybe different alternatives. So even the plastics that we use, plastic cups that we drink out of or that we store food in, obviously we know that there's a lot of toxicity within those things. The one part of the slide that I want you to just to appreciate is if you do tend to use plastics, you'll see a number in a triangle many times on the undersurface of the plastic. In fact, the plastic cups, the plastic bottles that some of you have that you walk in here with, numbers 1, 2, 4, and 5, that type of plastic is more stable. Granted, you shouldn't be using really any plastics in terms of storage or cooking in your house, but 1, 2, 4, and 5 are safer. You really should take a look at 3, 6, and 7 and try to avoid those. Those would be something you definitely want to go into the recycling bin. All of them have something called phthalates, and phthalates, they do know that it can cause cancer. They do know that it causes endocrine disruption, meaning your hormones are going to affect things like your thyroids and reproductive system. So best to really try to avoid keeping things, storing things, cooking things in plastic. If anybody microwaves, sometimes you'll put things in plastic. It's a great way for that food to just leach, all that plastic to leach into your food. So best to use glass. ultimately, I'm not a big proponent of microwaves. Better to reheat on a stove. So, you know, the concepts behind detoxification, and really the body in general, is you want to strive to enhance and improve your detoxification pathways. If we were to, you know, if there was a study and everybody in this room, you know, gave up their blood, every one of us has toxins in our systems. There's not one of us that is toxin-free. But the goals within, you know, what we're going to teach here tonight is really to strive to amp up your detoxification pathways in your body. You know, God was, he's all-knowing, so realizing that, you know, we were bound to see this stuff, He gave us these pathways to clear the body. So if we can help to accentuate those, it's going to go a long way in helping to keep our cells healthy, keep those cells clean. Obviously, on the other side of the coin, you want to minimize the entrance of toxins in the body as well. So it is possible to stay healthy. It does tend to be a full-time job, you know, to be healthy. But if you're, you kind of have to start where you start. You know, for a lot of us, I should say maybe, you know, some of us, you know, we've done, you know, a lot of work over the years to try and stay healthy. But there's a lot of things that you can do to just add to that, you know, that process. So these are some of the more common causes of underlying health issues. So one is structural issues. So the majority of the folks in this room are getting adjusted, seeing a chiropractor. And because, like I said, the brain controls everything about you, including your spinal cord, and it's housed within that bony armor we call your skull and vertebral column. If your spine is in proper alignment, and that brain is communicating, therefore, to the body at its fullest, your system is going to be realizing a level of health, you know, far beyond somebody who doesn't get adjusted. So if we can maintain that while you're getting, you know, going through your detoxification process, it's going to help the body to cleanse better. Other issues like food allergies. Again, something that we're seeing so rampant in the world today, and certainly again in the United States, maybe more than other places, are food allergies. People who have gluten intolerance. Again, several months ago we did that talk on the brain. Gluten is probably one of the most severe allergies that we're starting to see on a vastly wider scale. And some people actually don't have the gastrointestinal impact like others do. These folks are called silent sufferers. In all reality, they have more impact on their brains. So the gluten can actually cause things like depression, can cause dementia and Alzheimer's. They're starting to see it becoming much more, you know, rampant. So to avoid common allergens is really critical. And when we get into the actual nuts and bolts of the talk tonight, we're going to be striving to have you avoid things like gluten, have you avoid dairy, milk, again, one of the most common causes of allergies today, with all the steroids and growth hormone that's in these things, antibiotics. Cow's milk is probably one of the most allergenic foods that's out there. So food allergies is a big issue. Chronic inflammation is obviously a huge issue. So with inflammation, science says that if you can squash the inflammatory process, you can basically eliminate every degenerative conditions that man deals with. So that would be things like, you know, arthritis. That could be things like cancer and heart disease. So inflammation is really one of the keys to the body actually healing. Inflammation obviously causes pain. Most patients who walk into the office, into our office, are those that deal with pain. So if you eat a diet that is basically inflammatory free or minimally inflammatory, you can go a long way, even if you have, a disc bulge or a disc herniation or very severe arthritis. You can go a long way at reducing your pain levels and promoting, a much more functional way of life. A lot of these tend to be redundant. Obviously, if you're eating the wrong things, exposing your body to the wrong things, you're going to be in a toxic overload situation. So to avoid toxins, the air that we breathe. Obviously, currently, look at Detroit right now. I think it's Detroit that's dealing with all of that lead that's in their water. Yeah, Flint, Michigan. What a horrible thing that those folks are having to deal with. Again, trusting the EPA, trusting these larger government bodies, thinking that they're doing right by us, but obviously there was a massive failure that happened on so many levels. So, in terms of how we need to approach health and life, the onus is really on us. You can't expect these government bodies to really watch out for you, because ultimately they're not. So you have to be very, very responsible in terms of what what environments you allow yourself to be in, what you put into your body, where you're exposing yourself. Because obviously lead, it's a heavy metal. And a lot of these issues that we're talking about, cause a breakdown in the system, cause a breakdown in your gastrointestinal system, the leaky gut syndromes of the world. A lot of that, what they're finding today is that the gut and the nervous system that surrounds your gut has a very, very intimate relationship with your brain. And so the gut can actually cause depression. And a whole lot of health issues related to the brain malfunctioning have been related to the health of your stomach, the health of your entire intestinal system. So the different aspects that we're talking about here tonight are going to be addressed through doing some layer or level of this detoxification. And here are some real common symptoms of toxicity. We mentioned the brain fog, indecision, headaches, insomnia, weakness, depression. Go ahead, Fran.
You just switched the screen, and I wanted to add, I thought you were going down that whole list, and there was something I've never seen up there before, and I wanted to know what it was.
What's that?
Number 5.
Number 5, dysbiosis. That is bacterial imbalance that occurs in your gut. All right, so that is because of things like antibiotic use. The fact that they're just giving antibiotics away almost at will can cause a whole change in the terrain of your gut. We have probably an entire civilization, if you will, that lives inside of our gut. And if the bacterial balance in your gut is healthy, it has a huge impact again on your brain health. It helps to digest your food for you. The bacteria help in production of B vitamins. It's actually a major part of your immune system. 80% of your immune system is located around your gut. And this bacterial balance is part and parcel to that. So, if you're taking antibiotics, if you're using medications that tend to ravage the system that way, if you're eating, certain foods, different like, again, cow's milk that has a ton of antibiotics in it, or proteins, some meat that they've injected the cows with antibiotics, or farm-raised fish that has, again, that's rife with antibiotics, that goes into your system. It can literally upset the entire terrain of your body. So foods, medications, eating lots of sugars can literally change the terrain of the body. So that's why I'm obviously not a big proponent of eating carbohydrates or sugars, because it can create such imbalance in the body that dysbiosis can actually, again, like things like yeast, candida, literally can change your brain to want sugar, because it's, it wants to survive. So you get those massive cravings. Sometimes it's not you. Sometimes it's because your gut is so imbalanced with yeast in molds and things like that, that, you know, it's survival, so they're just feeding off of you. So dysbiosis is a huge issue, and that's where, again, you know, part of the cleansing and detoxification needs to occur by, you know, making some real, sometimes hard decisions about some of your favorite foods and putting them aside, sometimes, you know, permanently, or, you know, maybe just reducing them drastically. There's always, you know, ways of making better choices. There's, in today's world, in terms of food, there are so many different alternatives that are out there, and you can make a lot of good choices. So for how much, you know, bad that might be going on, there's still a lot of, you know, companies that are out there that are very conscious.
You know what, for, you know, sometimes you have to take antibiotics, and for people who do, it's a good idea to get a bottle of Floristort at the drugstore and
Correct.
take it for a month.
Right, yeah, I'm not saying that the antibiotic is not critical at a certain point potentially, so thank you for saying that. This is our nurse in the office. But so there's no doubt that antibiotics sometimes are critical, but just like we were just saying here, to do a probiotic, Floristort being one of them, you know, can be really vital in helping to reestablish that terrain. But it takes, sometimes it takes months and months to reestablish the terrain based off of one exposure to the antibiotics. Answer your question, Fran? So, again, just based off of symptoms of toxicity, you know, your questionnaire goes through some of these, but you can appreciate the impact that it has on the brain as well as the body when you're exposed to toxic levels of again, foods and environmental toxins. So here's your questionnaire that some of you folks, you know, filled out here just recently. Others had filled it out earlier, so I got to see some of the numbers. But just to kind of give me an appreciation by a raise of hands, who's from 0 to 25? Okay. Who's 26 to 74? Okay. Who's above 74? All right. And who doesn't want to raise their hand? All right. So basically, a little bit of overlap, obviously, but those are kind of the cutoffs as to, you know, the approach that some of you may have to take when it comes to how far you move into detoxification. Right? As we go into this, into nuts and bolts of tonight's talk, some folks can just do the diet and don't have to do hardly anything else. For a lot of us, within that, you know, basically that 26 to and above range, sometimes the diet isn't enough, and so we might not be able to necessarily, you know, solve that portion of what needs to happen with you tonight, but I am more than accessible, a phone call away. We can set up, you know, a consultation to discuss, you know, with you privately, you know, some of the more specifics as to what you might need to do. But I would tell you that everybody in this room can certainly start with just some basic components. Really, you know, maybe not tonight, but tomorrow morning you can start right away with things that we're going to be talking about. Oh, and by the way, in terms of any one of those sections, if you scored 10 or more in any one of those sections, that's also, you know, a very, very significant level of toxicity. So even though your overall number might be low, if you score 10 or more in a particular section, there's concern there. But again, it's one of those things that you might have to do some different things in terms of detoxification based off of that. That's why, you know, come and see me. We can talk about that. But if we look at, you know, the approach here, it is two-pronged. One is dietary modification. Right? So there is a list of foods. We provided different recipes for you in terms of a smoothie. There's different things that you can do in terms of smoothies that you can start to add into the diet. And there's also nutritional supplementation. sometimes what happens is, you know, folks are either so long-standing in terms of their toxicity, or so acute in terms of how toxic they are, that supplementation can go a long way. It's concentrated in terms of, you know, the nutrients that are in there that can really affect the physiology and the health of the body. So many times this is a good starting point that folks should take. So, you know, even though there's going to be some overlap of all 9 of these things and the different phases of detoxification, the first 3 are heavily focused on in terms of the first stage of the diet. So, you know, stage 1 basically, or step 1 of this process, you know, we want to start knocking out that inflammation, reducing things like pain, helping to promote joint mobility, helping to put out some of the fire within the tissues can go a long way in helping to reduce some of the stress that people experience. And that's not just on the physical, but also on the mental and emotional aspects. So your chiropractic adjustments, again, by keeping your spine during this time of detoxification, is really powerful in keeping that communication going from brain to cell level. So whether that cell is a muscle cell or your pancreas for that matter, helping to keep that brain communication flowing to those tissues certainly helps to upregulate the health and the function of those tissues so that everything is working at their best. As well, we're going to be removing a lot of common food allergens. When it comes to these food allergens, like I said, they promote such a strong immune reaction, and along with an immune reaction, there's typically, you know, white blood cells, there's edema, there's inflammation, there's pain. So if we can start to remove inflammatory foods and common ones, then it can help greatly in helping to reduce that fire, if you will, that's on the cell surface. Really, when it comes to detoxification, it's all about the cell wall. So every single cell in our bodies is that basically what we call a semi-permeable membrane. It allows for good things in, it allows for bad things to get out, but when the cell wall's inflamed, that doesn't happen. All right? So you can go through a malnutrition state, literally. You could be eating, but because of so much inflammation on the cell wall, it's not allowing for those good things to get into the cell, nor is allowing for toxicity to get out. And that, you know, promotes a lot of, again, pain, inflammation, brain fog, anxiety, all that people suffer with. And again, in terms of the nutritional supplementation, the nutrition is very much focused on also helping to put out the fire. So some of the things to avoid first, and we kind of went over some of them, is your gluten-containing foods. Again, we hit that pretty hard in the brain talk several months ago, but basically, like I was saying to you, gluten and its the family of foods, so your wheat, your barley, your rye, some of the oats that people consume, actually Canadian oats or steel-cut oats that actually say gluten-free on the package. Some of you can get away with, but sometimes people are so allergic that even oats are a problem. But needless to say, gluten is so destructive upon the gut that it promotes that leaky gut syndrome. It causes, therefore, malnutrition in the body. It promotes a ton of inflammatory responses, and if you know anybody who has celiac or is gluten intolerant, it can be highly devastating upon their health if they see it in their bodies. Some of you folks probably eat, you know, wheat and whole wheat and all that, and don't have a problem necessarily. But I would tell you, you would do yourself, I would say, a real justice by just removing it from your diet for 2 weeks and seeing how you feel. If you don't feel any different, fine, go ahead and eat it. But you might be surprised at how different you might feel in terms of energy, bloating, weight loss, again, your brain, your mental clarity, your joint function, because of the nature of what has become to our wheat. Tonight is not a wheat talk. I could talk, for hours on it, but needless to say, that's something that if you step into this diet, this is something that I want you to strive to avoid. And there's certainly plenty of alternatives these days in terms of grains that are healthy and better for the body. Alcohol, caffeine, anything that basically, coffees and teas, soy milk, these foods you're going to want to avoid. If you have a really, really hard time getting rid of, coffee during this time, you can do 1 cup, but, preferably, that doesn't give you an excuse. If you can get rid of it, get rid of it. But, if you're really having a hard time, functioning and managing, 1 cup of coffee is okay. Certainly, your pork and your other processed meats, strive to get rid of that. All right, again, pork or pigs, one of the most toxic animals, and what they do to the pig in terms of processing, bacon and things like that, very, very toxic. So if you can get rid of the processed meats, the pork, the cold cuts, that would be very, very helpful. Dairy and eggs, for that matter. We'll talk about eggs here in a moment. But dairy, again, cow's milk. Only baby cows were meant to drink, cow's milk. Humans were not meant to drink cow's milk or any machination thereof, the cheese and all that. And what they do to the cow's milk, actually what they do to the cows is one of the big reasons is that they feed them grain, all right, and the grain is sprayed with pesticides and herbicides, so that obviously goes into their system and bioaccumulates within the meat and within the fat. The grain actually has a fat ratio that's very, very different than our fat ratio, again, on our cell walls. So we have basically what's called a 4-to-1 ratio, 4 omega-6s to 1 omega-3 that exists on our cell walls. That's where our cells are most balanced at. But when you eat a grain-fed cow, you can disrupt that fat ratio by as much as 16-to-1. And with the eggs today, being in these massive chicken farms, the fat ratios can be up to 25 or 30-to-1. So when you start to distort your cell ratios by consuming these things over the months and years, it can lead to a real disruption in cell health. Again, that whole inflammatory process, toxicity issues. And when you start to overload toxicity upon the cell, that cell goes haywire. So, when we were talking about things like cancer, it's a big one in terms of elimination then. So, to try as well with things like, cow's milk, they expose it to high heat. So they actually denature the proteins, they hydrolyze the fats. You've got all the steroids and antibiotics in that milk because they put it in the cow. And so you drink that, and if you don't think it doesn't have an impact on you, you're mistaken. So, really trying to avoid cow's milk is critical. Now, if you can find raw cow's milk, or even better yet, raw goat milk, those things are much healthier, much better direction, but I'm still not a proponent necessarily of drinking cow's milk.
What about organic milk?
Well, it's a better step, in terms of elimination of a lot of the pesticides and herbicides, but Sandy, the animals are still being fed grain, number one, and number two, they're still homogenizing it, they're still pasteurizing it, so it's really just a sick white fluid that you're getting into your body, regardless of the fact that you might be getting, kind of less toxins in there. Yeah.
Can you rely on cage-free eggs?
Yes, so basically birds were meant to eat bugs and seeds.
Yeah.
So if you have a real reliable source of from a farmer who does that with their chickens, yeah, eggs can be very, very healthy for you. It's just if you have a good source. Certainly things like corn. Corn is now basically 100% genetically modified. So when they GMO'd it, they altered, the nature of its, nutritional balance as well as the genetics of that product. So, when that goes into our body, it literally, alters our system as well. They did that with wheat back in the 70s. They genetically modified wheat, and that's one of the reasons why it became such a problem, because they altered its genetic nature. So to avoid things like corn and avoid soy is really important. So you've got also, when we talk about fruit and fruit juices, eating the real fruit is not a problem. If you can strive to go organic, that would be best. All right, so that they're not spraying the foods with pesticides and herbicides, that would be a better direction. Fruit juices are just, it's all sugar. It's 100% sugar, and that's, again, when we're talking about cleansing and clearing, that's something that we really want to have you strive to start moving away from, is the heavy load of sugars. And then really when it comes to fats and oils, I don't have a problem with fats and oils as long as they're healthy, vital oils. And we've talked repeatedly in terms of our different advanced classes here. What are the healthy fats and oils? Which one aren't? But basically, anything that's partially hydrogenated, avoid. Anything that has trans fats, avoid. Your best oils are your grapeseed oil, your organic coconut oil, olive oil, and basically butter, just depending upon what you do with it and how you cook with it. Everything else, canola oil. I know that canola is a big one, but that's actually it comes rancid. It's actually a poisonous oil, especially the way that it's processed is very toxic. So you really got to avoid these trans fats, these partially hydrogenated oils. Again, they're a big cause for things like cancer, a big causative factor in heart disease. So to avoid them, you would really squelch a lot of the inflammatory responses in the body. Fran, you had a question?
I did. I'm seeing some contradiction here which confuses me. There it says all fruits and fruit juices, and here's these lists you handed out with a whole list of approved fruits on it.
Yeah, yeah, we'll get there in time. So we'll talk about that in a moment, because we are moving rapidly towards that. And then obviously the last one, if you folks know of your known food allergens that you have, certainly you're probably already avoiding them, but certainly during detoxification, a good thing to definitely avoid. So to bring up your question, Fran, here is basically your shopping list. All right, and so when you go through a detoxification process, number one is that this list is going to be free of a lot of foods that are allergenic in nature. Just trying to clean that up. I don't know that I can, but you've got it in front of you. So there's a healthy list of vegetables and fruits, and as far as beverages and dairy alternatives, there's a lot to choose from. You've got your gluten-free grains that you can start out with. So, when you talk about detoxification, Fran, it's one of those things that you have to start gently with a lot of people. You can't just go cold turkey, you can't go hardcore. And these fruits are actually low glycemic. So when it comes to starting to eliminate sugars, you can't take somebody who has been basically a sugar burner for probably a decade or more, maybe their entire lives, because the body wasn't meant to burn sugars, it was actually meant to burn fats. And for folks who have a hard time losing weight or gaining weight, your systems are actually broken. And a lot of that has to do with the brain and hormonal balance, all right, that goes on. There's different hormones called leptin and ghrelin that are in the brain, and when you start to right the system, these hormones actually start to kick on. And so if you gained weight, your body would activate a hormone called leptin, and it would help you lose weight. So when the system is, working, there would be no really obese people. Everybody would have this weight range that they'd be working at. But the problem is that because of just the constant levels of toxicity that affect hormone function, brain function, the overeating of carbohydrates, the medications and drugs that are taken, both recreational and otherwise, the system becomes dysfunctional, and so we need to start moving the body towards fat burning. All right. Again, if somebody is here and wants to lose weight and can't, that's definitely a discussion between that person and myself, because there's a lot more that maybe needs to occur within detoxification with them. But generally, if you can lose more than 10 pounds when you're trying, you don't have a problem. If you can't lose past 10 pounds no matter what you do, there's an issue. But these low glycemic fruits, you have to move somebody who's from a sugar burn to a fat burner. So again, you can't go cold turkey. So you have to move people, in a direction. I can't. You wouldn't be compliant if we just forced you into something, right, that you wouldn't want to do. So when it comes to these choices, there's obviously alternatives that are on this list. You can appreciate the different fats, that you can utilize. I know that people get freaked out about fat, but first of all, fat doesn't cause you to be fat. It's the inability to burn it. So if you're constantly burning sugars, you never get to burn that fat that you're storing, number one. And number two, there's this whole issue as far as cholesterol and saturated fats, and promotion of heart disease. Again, this is a topic for another day, but a lot of that just isn't true. So you shouldn't be afraid of eating basically what I call good God fats. These are things that are not adulterated by man, that were meant to be in our bodies, that we were meant to be able to consume. We just want to avoid the ones that have been manipulated and altered by what man has done to them. So you can go through this list. You can take it shopping with you. This is, again, this detoxification. It's not a weight loss diet. So those of you who are starting to move away from maybe the preponderance of sugars, eat more often. All right, that's critical so that you maintain your energy levels. So obviously, some of the things that we need to do in terms of success is there's a lot of planning that goes into this. So you're not going to necessarily start this tomorrow, all kidding aside. It's something that you have to plan for. So it's important that you make out your shopping list, that you have the food in the house. If you don't have it, then basically you wind up doing what I call survival eating. I'm hungry, try to fill the void, you open up the pantry, you look for something. It's not the best choice, obviously, but you're trying to fill that void. So you want to avoid doing this. And so by having this food in your house is going to be a huge step in moving towards a successful direction. Dr. Lonnie and I, what we'll do on a weekend is we will cook a lot. We'll cook different things, and then we'll parcel them out so that after a long day, go home, defrost something, have something very nutritious to eat, as opposed to, again, looking in that cupboard, you're tired, you're just hungry, you want to eat something, or for that matter, you don't eat at all right, which is actually not a good thing. All right, starvation is not appropriate. All right, so as much as you can to eat and to have that thing available to you, again, you're going to be promoting success, because one of the things that obviously eating regularly does is it generates metabolism. It promotes your metabolism. So if you go through starvation, you're actually slowing down your metabolic rate, and therefore you're also slowing down your detoxification. So eating is critical. Again, frozen fruits, vegetables, they're okay. I don't have a big problem with them, but obviously fresh is going to be best. Organic, better still. And the last one, if you can get your family members to join in, obviously, you know, it's going to promote even better success still, not just for you, but for that individual. And the more people that are on the bandwagon, you know, it just makes it easier when you're not having to, if you're the chef in the house, you know, to cook multiple meals. Any questions about that? Go ahead.
Question. For the grains, the list for rice,
Yeah.
white, is brown bad? Because I always thought that was better.
Well, here's the issue with brown rice, and it's not a big one, but brown rice has something called agglutinin in it. It's not gluten, it's agglutinin. And what that is it actually causes blood to coagulate. So if you're on blood thinners, brown rice is probably not the best thing to do because you're counteracting blood thinners. All right, so white rice doesn't have as much in there, or basically not at all. So is brown rice healthier for its, you know, its bran component and protein component? It is, but if you have blood issues, it's probably something that you don't want to be, you know, consuming in large amounts. Okay. Any other questions? All right. So other keys to success. You know, again, this is not a weight loss. This is, you know, eat to fullness. You can eat as many vegetables that are on the list. I would strive to have you not consume as many fruits, as much as maybe the proteins and the good fats and the veggies, kind of, in a sense, going paleo. If you have your craving for fruit, go for it. Really, in terms of timing of day, the best time of day is to do your fruits in the morning, all right? Because you've been fasting all night, your blood sugars are low. You need to kickstart the brain, because the brain feeds off of glucose, off of sugars. So, you know, have your fruits in the morning. Doing something like these smoothies is a great way to start off the day. And then as the day ensues, you know, start moving, you know, away from the sugars and start moving more towards your proteins, your fats, your vegetables. You know, you're using your body, you're using your brain. And the last thing that your body needs at the end of the day is sugars, all right? So the pizza, the pasta, some bread, something at the end of the day that is carbohydrate based. It affects your sleep, it adds weight to the body. You don't need that energy. Your body, those cells, they need to repair, and proteins and fats are really what the system needs. So it's one of those things, again, in terms of detoxification, that's just a side point. If you can, you know, I don't want to overwhelm you, so if you just, you know, eat to eat, you know, in terms of detoxification, that's great, but if you can actually start to shift, you know, your diet in terms of carbohydrates more in the morning, eliminate them as the day goes on, increase your proteins, your fats, and your vegetables throughout the rest of the day, you're going to find that your energy levels are so much better. You're going to be riding, you know, more up here in terms of energy than sometimes what happens with folks that do carbohydrates throughout the day as they yo-yo. All right, so this diet's going to go a long way at helping to regulate your systems. Also the other thing too about food allergies is try to rotate, you know, what you're eating too, so that you're not eating the same food day in and day out. So when it comes to, you know, why we experience allergies is because of things that our bodies have seen repeatedly, too much, and things that maybe our systems have never seen. So most of us are in the former category, that we eat the same things over and over again. So it's really best if you can rotate your diet. If you eat something on day 1, you know, maybe pick it back up on day 4, but try to avoid eating the same thing over and over again. So on a nutritional or supplementation level, these are products that probably a lot of you have been on. The top 2 from side to side here, the Intenzyme Forte, Beta TCP. I use these things extensively in the office. Intenzyme forte basically is a digestive enzyme, but many times I'll tell you folks to use it on an empty stomach because it helps to actually destroy things like bacteria. It can destroy candida, it can destroy molds, it can destroy viruses. It basically eats away, because it's a proteolytic enzyme, a protein-based enzyme. It can eat away at the cell walls, thereby destroying, bacterial imbalances or dysbiosis. The beta-TCP, that's a supplement that we use for the gallbladder and liver system. So the gallbladder and the liver, as well as the kidneys, but gallbladder and liver, they are some of the most critical routes of detoxification that we have. So the kidneys and the liver, by far, are the two most powerful ways that we get rid of toxins, basically through bowels and bladder. And so beta-TCP helps to promote better liver gallbladder function. It helps to promote better bile production. And bile is something that our livers make. It's stored in our gallbladder. And so bile does a couple of things. One is it breaks down your fats. Two is it actually breaks down certain sugars, your complex sugars. And three, it's kind of like a sponge that it absorbs toxins and helps to eliminate it through the bowel. So if somebody is like constipated, you guys have probably a gallbladder problem. If you have fluctuating constipation and diarrhea, you have a gallbladder problem. If you are sensitive to smells, perfumes, car exhaust, gasoline, whatever, you have a gallbladder liver problem. All right, so things like beta-TCP are really powerful in promoting better liver function so your body can get rid of toxins. And so between the two of these supplements, the Intenzyme Forte and the beta-TCP, this helps a lot in terms of starting to put out the fire in those tissues, as well as starting to promote better elimination of toxins through promoting better function through that liver gallbladder. Somebody who has cancer, liver gallbladder. There's so much far-reaching in terms of what those two supplements can do in helping somebody to detoxify. The two on the bottom, I use those more for pain. So sometimes the person's not toxic as much as they have so much inflammation. So BioLA as well as bromelain is really, really good for helping to reduce pain and inflammation. And like I said, you use them on an empty stomach. And basically, each of those bottles you would take through this step one. So you would take them between the times that you're eating. And because there's more tablets in there than basically days that you would be doing step one, which is basically a week. So you would be on this step one list of foods for a week. You would continue that process with these two supplements into step two, because many times it takes time to reduce inflammation, as well as to start to clear up a lot of the dysbiosis or bacterial imbalances that people deal with. Even in terms of your chiropractic care, one of the first things that Dr. Lonnie and I focus to address is inflammation. That's why we see you so heavily initially, is by keeping that nerve communication open, your body starts to heal. Now, we're not the healers, obviously. God put the healer inside of you, but it's something that by keeping those channels of communication open, the first stage after a trauma is we want to squash that inflammation. Once the body does that, then the system can start to lay down new tissue growth, the terrain is all cleaned up, and the body can start to heal. So your chiropractic care, once again, part and parcel to a lot of what we do here, even in terms of detox. As we move into the second phase, this is where we start to get hardcore, Fran. All right, so when you're starting to deal with a lot of the imbalances and a lot of the chronic issues that people deal with, heavy metals, obviously, again, the folks in Flint, Michigan, they're in an acute exposure. So if you were to test their blood, you would probably find lead in it. Most of us are not in an acute exposure. Most of us have been in chronic exposure, all right? So this stuff has already found its way into the tissue layers of the body and disrupting the system. So in order to get those things mobilized and get them moving, you know, you have to promote detoxification through a couple of ways. So, you know, the focus, you know, on step 2 here is to start to really address that toxic burden that we deal with. Now, depending upon how toxic you are, this could last 10 days, you know, which is basically the minimum, or it could last 20 days. The diet becomes more restrictive because a lot of those toxins that we hold on to are actually located in the fat. A lot of the toxins that we deal with are actually fat soluble, so they move into the fatty layers, you know, not just the fat that you feel here, but you actually have, you know, fat that's deep within the system, that surrounds the organs. It's, so you know, this is stuff that you don't necessarily see aesthetically, but it's deep within the internal aspects of the body, and they can very much disrupt the nature of hormone communication, enzyme production, neurologic communication. We could go on in terms of what heavy metals can do to the body. So, you know, we want to start to delve into, you know, a deeper approach here. So like I said, minimally 10 days, maximally 20 days, and so drinking more water, staying consistent with your chiropractic care is important. And here's step 2. So basically what you see here is the elimination of your sugars by and large, the elimination of your grains. So even if you do eat gluten-free, all right, it's once, you know, that grain goes into your body, it becomes sugar. All right, so we're really kind of moving into a paleo direction. Does anybody here eat paleo? Anybody on a paleo diet other than this guy? Okay. All right, so paleo eating is a really powerful approach to maintaining health and wellness. Dr. Atkins, if you guys remember Dr. Robert Atkins, the man had it right. I don't necessarily agree with eating tons of bacon and other approaches that he had. And in his second book, he certainly backed off in terms of, you know, the intensity of that first book. But he knew what he was talking about in terms of correcting things like diabetes and heart disease. They were seeing, you know, these things reversing while people were eating, you know, a lot of protein, a lot of fats and vegetables. So eating paleo is a very healthy approach. Again, you just have to make really good decisions about, you know, the quality of your proteins, doing the grass-fed beef, doing the free-range chickens, doing the wild-caught fish, and the cage-free eggs and things of that nature. Those are much better approaches, along with, you know, if you can afford these things, organic, you know, vegetables can go a long way. And yes, do these things cost more? Sure they do. But if you're eliminating, you know, a lot of the other foods during this time, again, your breads, your cereals, your sugars, you know, that money can be divested in a much healthier direction. So this is this gets a little bit more difficult during this time, but again, the payoff is the body can really start to, you know, clear and cleanse a lot of what it's holding on to. We're not going to go over this slide. Again, this is this type of approach with the BioDetox kit. This might be somebody who's in that 70, you know, around that 70 range and above. Not everybody has to do this approach, all right? But it's there for those who need it. One of the things that you guys are going to potentially experience is what's called a healing crisis. All right, so obviously a lot of these toxins that you've been dealing with and that have been, you know, buried in the system, they're going to start to get mobilized. So your body wants to get rid of them, all right, through your bowels, through your bladder, through the respiratory system, through your skin. The skin's actually the largest organ in the body. So the skin is ultimately a huge part of detoxification, which we'll talk about in a second here. But you're going to experience potentially a healing crisis where the body starts to go through a powerful detoxification. And some of the symptoms that you experience on a regular basis, you might see them increasing, all right, temporarily. So if that happens, don't be concerned. It's very, very normal. It's, again, God, put these processes into the body. He wouldn't leave you hanging. So in terms of detoxification, your system naturally, wants to get rid of this stuff. But you could have, like I said, headaches. You could experience fatigue. You could experience joint aches. Maybe the aches and pains migrate. You might be, really tired during this time. But that's all normal. If, again, in terms of open lines of communication, definitely talk to Dr. Lonnie and myself. We'll talk you down from the ledge. This is all normal, it's all healthy, it's all important for your body to do, all right? So that your systems get rid of all these poisons that you've been holding on to. So these are things that you can obviously then do. Get more rest, listen to your body. If you're tired, get more rest. Sleep is an important time for your body to regenerate, to cleanse, to heal. All right, so listen to your body. As Americans, we just push. We just, try to push right through it. Men more than women sometimes, but that's not the best way a lot of the times. So if you can slow down, listen to your body, be more sensitive to what your body's telling you, you'll get through this healing crisis a lot better. You can do skin brushing. Again, the skin is the largest organ in the body. Has everybody done skin brushing before? Familiar with it? All right, basically using like a natural bristle, and there's actually a process by which you go over the body, and it helps to promote detoxification through stimulating your lymphatics. So the lymph system is basically the cleansers of the blood, your lymph nodes, and can be really powerful at helping to move toxicity into the bloodstream and out of these sluggish channels, and help your body to eliminate the toxins that might be in the system. Certainly, soaking in Epsom salts or sea salts can be helpful, drawing toxicity out of the skin, out of the body. In terms of exercise, we're big proponents of exercise in this office, but sometimes, again, when you're going through detoxification, it's one of those things that to exercise might actually, really kind of bring you down. So exercise can be good, but your body's going to tell you pretty quickly if you got it that day or not. So it's important not to just push through on that day. And we actually had a conversation with somebody today about that. So the other thing that you might experience through a healing crisis is when you start to address all the bacterial imbalances and you eliminate what they feed off of, being sugar, there's a die-off that occurs. So the candida starts to die off, or the bacteria start to die off. And you start to go through that craving phase. That craving stage is when you're being successful. So the best thing to do is just to keep pressing in during that time and not giving in, because once you get through that craving phase, sugar is going to be a non-issue for you. You're not really going to care about it any longer. So things like chocolate, it's not going to be a big issue as you move through the craving phase. I know a lot of you have tried the paleo bars that we have in the office. Again, the same company that does this product, this paleo meal, this Designs for Health paleo meal. They also make these great candy bars. It's made from sugar alcohols, so it's a sugar that doesn't get absorbed. There's one that tastes like a Mounds bar, coconut. There's other ones that are chocolate or berry. These things are that'll help you through the craving phase without affecting you in terms of weight gain, or you feel like you're cheating, but it's actually a healthy thing for you. The proteins that are in there they come from grass-fed cows, so you're maintaining that 4-to-1 ratio. If I didn't mention that before, that's what we should be eating, is grass-fed animals, because cows should be eating grass, not grain. So that would be very, very powerful to help you through that stage. But it's important that you keep pressing in. And that craving phase typically hits, for a lot of people within about a week into step 2. All right, sometimes it's 10 days into it, but typically somewhere in that week range, that's when that craving starts to hit. But that's also, like I said, when the body is actually starting to divest itself of all that bacteria, all that yeast. So if you can push through that, you guys are going to be golden that way. The other thing that can be really powerful, and I know, again, a lot of you have used this technology in our office, is the Zirconia foot bath system. It actually is a really powerful tool that we use in the office for detoxification. So once again, in terms of your skin, the skin being one of the largest organs in the body as far as detoxification, this system is really powerful because basically it's a foot bath. We put this, it's called an array in it, and it sets up this ionic charge in the water. And because a lot of the heavy metals, they have a positive and negative charge on them, it will help to draw toxicity out of the water. And you will see it in living color. I mean, you'll see the heavy metals come out black, chlorine comes out purple, or blue, excuse me. It's remarkable in terms of what comes out in the water, but it's a really powerful way at helping somebody who's dealing with toxic overload in terms of heavy metals to rid the system. And the only thing that we would recommend during that time is basically taking like a mineral supplement, because the thing doesn't have a conscience. It doesn't know just to pull out heavy metals and leave important minerals in your body. So in terms of just using a mineral supplement during that time, you can help to supplant what your body might be losing. But the gain as far as pulling heavy metals out is really far-reaching. We've had some just tremendous responses over the years with this technology. So something that is a potential consideration. It's not mandatory. You don't have to do it. But again, for those that are really interested in detoxification, cleansing your body, or having issues, this is something that that we can do. It's a passive thing. You just sit there and soak your feet for, I think it's, what is it?
23 minutes.
23 minutes. So simple process, and really effective, however, in terms of its cleansing ability. So other things to note. Make sure that you still maintain your medication. All right, Dr. Lonnie and I, we're not medical doctors. We can't make recommendations, the medications that you might be utilizing, but certainly it's a good idea to maintain your medication as you're taking it. However, what you might find is that one of the things that happens in terms of sickness and disease is that medication, it manipulates the system. It pushes the body in the direction that the medication wants to take you. Your body isn't excited by the drug and say, hey, this is great. We were made to live in this homeostasis, this balanced system, but drugs push the body and ultimately have side effects. So by eliminating toxins that interrupt pathways, interrupt enzymes and hormone pathways, if you start to eliminate, obviously, what kind of got you into that symptomatic state, the body is going to find balance. It's going to find that regulation point. And what may happen at the end of this is that you can either reduce the amount of medication that you're taking, or you can get off of it completely. That's where it's a good idea of anybody who kind of jumps into the process with us. We're going to be taking your blood pressure, we'll be checking your pulse, obviously getting feedback from you, because obviously if you're cleansing your system, those drugs are going to work a lot better. All right, so you might find that your blood pressure decreases more when you're on this detoxification process. Is that a bad thing? Obviously not. Just something that needs to be monitored. Communication with your medical doctor is critical. because, again, you might be able to actually reduce the amount that you're taking. And in terms of, toxins, drugs are toxins. They weren't meant to be in our bodies. It's just that it's plain and simple. We were meant to be free of all of that. It's just, again, over the years, the things that we've either consciously done or unconsciously been subjected to, the body changes. So you might find that to be the case. As far as other supplements, it's a good idea that in terms of nutritional supplements that you actually get off of other things and just do the program initially here. So finally, the last process in this detoxification is rebuilding. All right, so we've done a lot of elimination of toxicity, but we also want to rebuild the system. And so getting back into basically what we call the regeneration and repair phase of this process, you want to go back to that step 1 diet. Step 1 and step 3 are the same diet. So then you can start to reintroduce your sugars, reintroduce your grains. If you can basically, one thing I would say is eliminate all gluten completely and eat gluten-free in terms of the grains. It probably is a great idea for you. But if you just can't give up that sourdough bread, so be it. But as much as you can, start to reintroduce things, but also be mindful. I wouldn't add everything back at once. I would slowly reintroduce, foods into the body and see how you feel, see how you react. Your mental clarity, or brain fog for that matter, your energy levels, your sleep patterns, weight gain. So if you actually did lose weight, and then you see that you're putting these foods back into your body, and you start to gain weight again, probably a good idea is to either back off on the amount or eliminate completely. Other things that you can use is a multivitamin, fish oils, again another source of healthy vital oils. These fish oils are good for hormonal regulation. When we talked about blood, fish oils are a very, very good agent in terms of slipperiness of your blood. So it's like a blood thinner, but where things like aspirin destroy your platelets, fish oils don't do that. So fish oils can be really powerful as an anti-inflammatory. It can help with cholesterol balance. So something that I think everybody should be using. With, again, elimination of all the toxic bacteria, you want to make sure that you are potentially using a probiotic to re-inoculate the system, because once that, if you will, that regaining of that territory that you're striving to do, you want to re-inoculate the body with the healthy bacteria, because it's one of those things, if you don't, many times what happens is that the candida and other things, they will reestablish that terrain if you don't do something to preserve it. As well as other things that you could do. If you're taking vitamin D or vitamin C, those are all good things. Chondrosamine, certainly good for reducing inflammation and joint repair. So when it comes to things like arthritis or the aches and discomforts that one gets in their joints, chondrosamine can be an effective tool. By the way, you guys all tried this paleo meal. When it comes to step 2, if you're not interested in weight loss, it's fine. You can still use this, but this can be a meal substitute. 2 scoops has it has 32 grams of protein, so a little bit more than like a chicken breast. And again, this is undenatured whey protein, comes from grass-fed cows, so fat ratios are proper. When it comes to that leaky gut syndrome, one of the 9 that people deal with very commonly, this has something called glutathione in it, and that's a really powerful antioxidant that's helpful in rebuilding the integrity of the gut. So this is a very good product. We use this quite regularly. I give this to my kids on a regular basis. So this is something that we have in our house all the time, something that you guys can use in terms of that step 2 phase of detoxification. Again, this is just a good thing to do for a breakfast or a meal replacement. So basically in those different phases I asked you earlier with the raise of hands, the levels of toxicity. If you're under 25, potentially just eating the step 1, step 2, step 3 diet could be more than sufficient. If you do tend to suffer with some issues related to pain or joint misalignment, inflammation of the joints, the intenzyme forte, the beta-TCP can be effective additives. You can do something like this as far as that step 2, as a meal replacement or even additional. Again, this is not weight loss that we're concerned about here, but that might be just enough. It is just the diet alone for a lot of you who are basically 25 and below. For those of you in that middle range, 26 to 74, obviously if you start to climb, these numbers, many times I would have you do step 2 for more like 20 days. We might do things in addition in terms of nutritional supplementation that really help delve into the body for significant detoxification. This bio-detox packs, basically they already come, already wrapped. There's 5 different tablets that are in there that help with clearing and cleansing of some of the more tenacious heavy metals and bacterial imbalances that one deals with. But if some of you are in the 75 and beyond range, you and I need to sit down and have a private consult, because a talk like this is just not going to be significant enough or sufficient enough. And these are the folks that have dealt with things like strokes or cancer, or have significant heart disease, or have a lot of endocrine imbalances, autoimmune disorders. Those folks, they really need to sit down with me, and we need to really go through a lot of stuff. But again, regardless of kind of where you stand, everybody can do the diet aspect and start moving in a powerful direction. Just again tomorrow if you're ready. So any questions for me?
Does step 1 just last for a week?
Yeah, a week to
Okay.
10 days at most. So
Okay.
if you're doing step 1 and eating on that food list, and try to give you some different recipes in there, so that, and even for that matter, I think that we also included just a week of meal planning, so that if you're having a hard time figuring out what to do, you literally have a week's worth of what to eat. But there are some recipes that are in there that you can start with. Good, Sandy.
If I have cereal that says whole wheat
Yeah,
or whole grains,
right.
is that gluten?
It depends upon, well, you have to read a little further.
What it
'Cause-
says after that, like oats?
Yeah, it could be whole wheat or whole rye or whole whatever, but
Okay.
yeah, so
Alright.
cereal is basically one of those foods that you're going to want to eliminate.
Okay.
All right, so eating cage-free eggs, or doing a smoothie, or
Yeah.
fruit, in the morning for breakfast. If I'm not doing one of those, basically what I do is I do fruit in the morning, and
How
I stick to
soon-
berries.
How soon, after you get up in the morning, is considered breakfast? Like if I get up at 7 and I eat at 10, is that breakfast, or should I eat
Well,
sooner?
that's a great question. You actually should eat within about an hour of being awake, because the longer you wait, we talked a lot about this in our last talk on brain health. Hyperglycemia, too much sugar, and actually hypoglycemia, too little sugar, can actually start to cause your brain cells to become damaged and die. So you really do need to eat, and you need to eat often to help it maintain that blood sugar balance for your brain. So yeah, being up and exercising, a lot of people will get up and exercise
Yeah.
before they do anything.
Mhm.
You really do need to eat a little something before you go and exercise.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
almond milk and coconut milk, are they, I mean, are they equal? Does it make any difference? Should you?
You know, one of the things that I would certainly recommend is, if you're not into it, don't buy it, you know. So when it comes to like eating, the foods that are on that list, if you really don't like them, don't waste your money. But in terms of coconut milk or almond milk,
Yeah.
whatever
Well,
you like.
I like them both.
Yeah, whatever you like. It's
Oh.
neither here nor there, which one, you know. So whatever floats your boat.
Okay, but they're both better than the plain old milk.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and soy milk for that matter. I would,
Yeah, I don't,
the women in this room, nobody should be touching soy, and for that matter, neither should the men. Nobody should be doing soy. Soy is a toxin, it's a poison.
yeah.
Head over.
Speaking of soy, there was a documentary about it, who started it. As a matter of fact, it was Washington, a black scientist who made a vehicle
Yes,
out of the, whatever, from the soy plant.
Henry
They
Ford
lived
was
on
making
farm.
dashboards out of
But
soy.
yeah, exactly. And a demonstrator took an axe or some sort of strong tool and banged at the hood.
Yeah, indestructible, right?
Couldn't
Yeah.
couldn't damage it.
Yeah, soy, in fact, the government subsidizes soy and corn, you know, production. So that's why you find it in almost everything. But soy has got toxins that they can't remove from it. And, you know, for a woman, it can cause epithelial cell growth, you know, so it can cause larger breasts. I mean, why are we seeing these, like, 11 and 12-year-old girls, you know, they're, like, crazy developed. But there's a serious imbalance that's going on. It can actually promote cancer.
Yes,
So.
I know. My doctor, that didn't have anything to do with eating healthy, said, stay away from soy.
Yeah.
Stay away from
Yeah,
all
just
of it.
avoid it completely.
Yeah.
So, please.
But going on to a different subject now, I've heard a lot about the good fats.
Yes.
Good fats being the avocado, which is great, I love it. But are there more good fats than what's listed here in the oils?
Yeah, in terms of, yeah. So in terms of fats, it's got your coconut, it's got your grapeseed, your olive oil, your fish oils. So you can do any of the nut butters, save peanuts. Peanuts are heavy in molds, all right, so I would avoid doing you know, any kind of shelled peanut, like your typical barroom peanut. Avoid those, so for your kids even, you know, you don't want to like feed them molds, so avoid peanuts. You can do olives, which are not on that list. You can do, like I said, other nuts. In addition, your proteins. So when you're doing, you know, grass-fed beef or your free-range chickens, your wild-caught deep marine salmons, your sardines, your anchovies, these things already come with healthy fats. So in terms of, you know, what's on that list, there's a lot more yet that you can do. If you have a source for raw butter, like I said, better. Organic butter would be a good choice, but if you can find raw, it's even better still. So yeah.
You were talking about the benefits of fish oil. Is there an alternative? I'm afraid to try it because I have fish allergies.
Yeah, so with you know, with fish oils, there's a lot of what are called EPA and DHA in it. These are different types of fats that are really powerful for brain health and for inflammatory reduction. But if you have a problem with those, I wouldn't necessarily tempt fate. So doing your flaxseed oil, it doesn't have as high in terms of those oils, but there is a trace amounts in there. So you can do your flaxseed, and that's also a very effective anti-inflammatory